This is the Fletcher v. Peck decision in 1810 by Max Pham and Sebastian Lacouture. Here is some background info. In 1795, the Georgia state legislature passed a land grant awarding territory to 4 companies. The following year, however, the legislature voided the law and declared all rights and claims under it to be invalid. In 1800, John Peck acquired land that was part of the original legislative grant. He then sold the land to Robert Fletcher 3 years later, claiming that past sales of the land had been legitimate. Fletcher argued that since the original sale of the land had been declared invalid, Peck had no legal right to sell the land and thus committed a breach of contract. Could the contract between Fletcher and Peck be invalidated by an act of the Georgia legislature?
The issue. In 1800, John Peck purchased some land that was part of the 1795 grant, and in 1803 he sold 13,000 acres of it to Robert Fletcher for $3,000. When Fletcher discovered the sale of the land had been voided by state law, he filed a suit against Peck for damages, claiming Peck had lied to him in promising he had a good title to the land. A federal circuit court ruled for Peck, and Fletcher appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. The question before the court was whether the Act of 1796 was a violation of Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. No state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contracts, or grant any title of nobility. In other words, whether once the state of Georgia had finalized the original sale of the land, it could constitutionally repeal that sale, or whether the Constitution prohibited it from doing so.
It's not fair. You didn't have a good title to the land. I want my money back.
I didn't know. It was Georgia's fault who repealed the land sale.
The Supreme Court, in a 4-1 decision by Chief Justice John Marshall, finds that Georgia violated the contract clause of the Constitution when it repealed the grants. The court concedes that the fraud underlying the grants was deplorable.
But when a law is in its nature a contract, when absolute rights have vested under that contract, a repeal of that law cannot divest those rights. Fletcher's suit against Peck is dismissed, and Georgia's law repealing the grants is struck down. Court is adjourned.
The impact. The court's strict interpretation of the contract clause was modified 17 years later by the Taney Court in Charles River Bridge v. Warren Bridge. But for nearly a century, the decision served as a major barrier to state economic regulation of business corporations.